Hello everyone, welcome back to our IELTS grammar course. It's great to have you along today, and we're going to carry on with our deep dives looking at the various different English tenses. So today's focus is all about the future simple and the future continuous. So you might be aware of these tenses, maybe you're not too sure and you don't know the specifics. Well, today is the lesson for you. We're going to go through each one and then we're going to look at lots of examples which have an IELTS focus, so you can see how you can implement these tenses when answering various different questions and doing maybe your essays as well. So really good practice for you today. All right, let's kick things off with the future simple. What is the future simple used for? Well, it is used to express predictions, promises, plans, and intentions for the future, and we'll look at each one of these in more depth. And the formation of it. So we want to use the modal auxiliary verb will or shall in some cases, but more often than not will. And then you follow this with the base form of the main verb. So before the verb has been changed in any way, the base form. Okay, let's see this in action. So we have our subject at the beginning, presumably, of the sentence, will. Then you follow it with the base form of the verb. So this is quite a straightforward tense, as you'll see today. You just need to remember that will after the subject and then the base form. For example, I will travel to Europe next summer. She will finish her homework before dinner. They will attend the conference next month. And you'll notice that singular subjects and plural subjects still follow the same pattern. So it doesn't matter whether you have I will, she will, they will, we will. It's always will that follows the subject and then the base form of the verb there. Okay. More examples for singular nouns. So you can say, my friend will visit me next weekend. The doctor will arrive in the afternoon. She will buy a new car next year. So just a few more examples there highlighting this singular noun, singular subject, and then we follow it with will, then we follow it with the base form of the verb. Plural nouns, we've got, for example, the students will present their projects on Friday. Our friends will join us for dinner tonight. The employees will attend a training session next month. Okay, so nevertheless, plural nouns, plural subjects still follow the same pattern. So even though there's more than one student, more than one friend, more than one employee, you still follow it with will and then the base form of the verb. Okay, so we now want to form a negative with, say, regular verbs. Well, how do we do that? Well, we need to use the negative contraction will not. So you want to add a not after the will, or in the contracted form, won't. So will not or won't, up to you. Won't is more frequently used in casual conversation, whereas will not is a bit more formal, I would say, but they are interchangeable. So let's see this with regular verbs. I won't finish my homework until tomorrow. She won't attend the meeting due to a prior commitment. They won't buy a new car this year. Okay, so you can see how these are all examples with that contracted form of will not. Irregular verbs, well, we follow the same pattern. There's nothing different here. You use will not or won't with the base form of the irregular verb. Let's see this. They won't see each other until next month. He won't bring his dog to the park. We won't meet at the usual place. Right, so those verbs see, bring and meet are all irregular, and you keep them in your base form just like you do with the regular verbs, and you use that will not contracted form there as well. Okay, so hopefully that's clear how to use the future simple tense with affirmative examples, negative examples. Now let's think about interrogatives, or questions in other words. So to form the interrogative sentences in the future simple, you want to invert, or in other words swap, the subject and the modal auxiliary verb will. So it's fairly straightforward. You just do a quick swap with will and the subject, and then that creates your question. Examples now. Will she attend the conference next week? There we go. So we've swapped around will and she. If you wanted to go back to just an affirmative sentence, no question, what should we do? Well, we simply invert them back. So you would say she will attend the conference next week. So it's a very simple swap here. Another one, will they finish the project on time? Will he buy a new car this year? There we go. Various examples then of how you can swap the modal auxiliary verb and the subject to create your interrogatives. Irregular verbs, nothing changes. So you invert the subject and the modal auxiliary verb will. Examples, will they see each other before the concert? So see being an irregular verb here, but that stays in its base form. And actually it stays in the same position in the sentence as it would with an affirmative sentence. Okay, other examples include, will he bring his dog to the park? So we started the sentence with will again. And another last example here, will we meet at the usual place? Alright, so that was the future simple. Quite straightforward in terms of how tenses go. So with that knowledge, let's step it up a gear and move into the future continuous. Maybe you've heard of this tense before. If you've been with us on our course here, then you might have an inkling as to how the continuous nature of the tense might change the formation. So let's see now how it works. Okay, what do we use this tense for first? What's the purpose of it? Well, another name that it goes by is the future progressive tense, and it's used to describe actions or events that will be ongoing. That's the clue there. You might have guessed that. The continuous nature refers to the ongoing nature, or something in progress at a specific point in the future. It emphasizes the duration of an action that's expected to happen over a period of time. So this is something in the future, yes, similar to future simple. But unlike future simple, future continuous refers to events that are ongoing. There's a duration happening here. How is it formed? Well, we don't just use will for this tense, we also need another modal auxiliary verb, be. And we use them together, will be. Then this is followed by the present participle. So that is the base verb plus that ing. And that ing reflects the continuous ongoing nature of this tense. And we've used it in other tenses, past continuous, present continuous. This present participle reflects that duration. Here's the equation. If this is helpful, I know that a lot of students benefit from seeing it both in word form and maybe in a sort of maths equation here that can be helpful. So subject plus will be plus present participle, which is the base verb, plus that ing. So a bit more complicated than the future simple. It's not as straightforward. But let's have a look at some examples, and hopefully by the end we'll all be confident with this test. Before we look at some examples, let's think about this idea of the present participle. What exactly is it? Well, a present participle is a word derived from a verb, so taken from a verb if you like, that can be used as an adjective and also to form the continuous verb tenses. Right, so we see this quite a lot. This comes up, and it is simply created by adding that ing to the base form of the verb. Okay, so with that knowledge, let's go into some affirmative examples. I will be studying for my exams all day tomorrow. So we have our subject in green, I, our auxiliary verbs, auxiliary modal verbs, will be, and then our present participle of the main verb, studying. We've got that ing underlined just to be even more clear about how that present participle is being formed there. So hopefully you can see that in action here, and actually it's not as perhaps daunting as it seemed before when we looked at the formula. So a deep dive of this sentence. This sentence indicates that the action of studying will be in progress throughout the day tomorrow. And that's just going into a bit more detail there to show you the duration of this action. Why is it the future continuous? Well, it's something is happening all day tomorrow, in this case, studying. We're not sure when it starts, it's not specific. We don't know when it ends, but we know that there's an ongoing time period here. Okay, another one. They will be travelling to Paris next month. So let's look a bit deeper into this. This is talking about the ongoing action of travelling to Paris. And it's really drawing a highlight on it, really emphasising it, and suggesting that it will take some time. So we're not sure how long, but there will be a considerable portion of travel time to get to Paris next month. Okay, another one. She will be working on a new project during the conference. So there's an ongoing feature of her working, the subject here, and that there is a time frame actually for this, so that we have a little bit of specifics. The conference. We're not sure how long the conference lasts for, however, but we know that, okay, the duration of the conference will be used for this subject, she, to work on a project, a new project. Okay, so those were some affirmative examples, and I think it's really useful to just think about this ongoing nature a little bit, because that's the big distinction between the two tenses here. So then, how do we form a negative in the future continuous? Well, important to note, just like in future simple, it's the same for both regular and irregular verbs. So you want to use the negative form of the modal auxiliary will, so will not or won't, and the present participle, that base verb plus the ing. He won't be sleeping when we arrive. So I've highlighted the won't just to show you how we can use this contracted form, will not. But however, nevertheless, we still have the subject and the other modal auxiliary verb be, that doesn't change, and the present participle sleeping. So everything else stays the same. We've just added that not to will, and it can become won't then, or will not. Another one, we won't be eating at that restaurant again. Okay, so again, nothing changes apart from we've just added not. And another one, they won't be travelling to Berlin next month. Right, so hopefully you can see that we've simply just added that not to these sentences and everything else remains the same. Interrogatives then. What do we do here? Well, we want to invert the subject and the modal auxiliary will, just like in future simple. But then we need to add be, and then we need to follow it with the present participle. So there's a few more steps here, but you start off the same, you just put will before the subject. For example, will, okay, that kicks things off this time. Will the scientists, that's the subject, be unraveling more mysteries? Okay, we've got an interesting example this time. So you can see how the questions are formed, very similar to future simple, but you don't want to forget those next steps of adding the be and the present participle. Will the circus performers be juggling in the next show? Will robots be taking over in a few years? All right, so those were our two tenses, our focuses of today. Now, as always with these tense lessons, and in general, it's nice to have an IELTS focus. So how can you now implement this knowledge and use it to practice for your IELTS exam? Well, I've got some examples here for us to think about. So let's go back to the future simple. And you might be asked a question like, describe a country you would like to visit in the future. Okay, so we've actually got this clue here, the future. So we know that, okay, we need to speak about the future tense. So here's a sample answer. One country I have always dreamed of visiting in the future is Japan. If I get the chance to go, I will visit Mount Fuji and the National Garden. By setting a realistic budget and consistently saving, I am confident that I will embark on this journey to Japan within the next couple of years. Okay, there we go. So, here's the sample answer. Now over to you. See if you can spot any future simple examples. Have a look. Any words that you spot? Can you remember how to form the future simple? Let's see here. We can give our knowledge a test. Okay, I think let's have a look at this together. So, in green, we've got a couple of future simple examples here. So, I will visit Mount Fuji. That's an example. I will embark on this journey. That's another example. So, any plans in the future? Then of course you can talk about your future goals and plans with the future simple. Right, so let's switch gears and think about the task 1 academic now. So you could say a sentence like, over the next decade, it is expected that the demand for renewable energy sources will steadily increase. Or you could say something like, comparing the data for 2020 and the projected figures for 2035, it is evident that the rate of urbanization in the metropolitan area will have more than doubled. So we've got expressing trends here, making comparisons, all things that you do in the task 1 academic. Okay, so can you spot the future simple in these task 1 examples? Have a think. Any words that give it away? We'll have a look. Oh, okay, so in the first one we've got renewable energy sources. That's the subject. Will, that's the modal auxiliary verb. Increase. So we've not highlighted steadily because that's an adverb here. So it's not really part of, it's just modifying the verb increase. But you can see the base form of the verb there after will, increase. Okay, so you can see how you can use something like this. In the next one, the rate of urbanization in the metropolitan area will have more than doubled. So have, following the modal auxiliary will, and then the subject there. Okay, so will is a bit of a giveaway here when you're thinking about the future. If you can see will, then it's one of the future tenses. And then if it's followed by the base form of the verb, then you know that it's a future simple. Right, over to future continuous. How can you use this? Well, you might be asked, discuss a future project or goal that you have in your professional life. Here's an example of an answer you might give. We'll read it together. In the coming year, I'll be undertaking a significant project at work involving the implementation of a new customer relationship management system. I will be collaborating with cross-functional teams to analyze current processes, select a suitable CRM platform, and oversee the integration process. Throughout the project, I will be conducting training sessions for staff members to ensure a smooth transition. So a bit of a longer example there, but you can see how you can talk about these various different things. Okay, can you spot the future continuous? How is it different from the future simple? What can you see here? And then we'll have a look through it together. Okay, so the examples. I'll be undertaking. I and will are contracted to form I'll. I will be collaborating. I will be conducting. Right, so we've got that subject followed by will, just like in future simple, but this time we follow it with another modal auxiliary be, and then we have the present participle. Okay, so now let's look into some task 1 academic sentences that you might find yourself writing and thinking about. You could say something like, over the next decade, the manufacturing sector will be increasingly adopting sustainable practices. Another one, in the upcoming years, the demand for renewable energy sources is expected to grow steadily, and industries will be increasingly integrating sustainable practices into their operations. A long sentence there. So let's have a think about where we can spot that future continuous. Can you spot it? Is it there somewhere? Is it maybe hard to spot because of potential adverbs? I know that makes things a bit more difficult, but it's a bit of a challenge here. Okay, let's see if we were right. Okay, so the first one we have, the manufacturing sector will be increasingly adopting sustainable practices. So the part of the tense that I've highlighted is the subject, the manufacturing sector. then the modal auxiliaries will be, and then the present participle. And increasingly is an adverb in the middle there. So be prepared to see the tenses perhaps with other verbs in the structure as well. So just something to be aware of, but it didn't stop us from being able to spot the tense. Okay, and the last one I've highlighted, industries will be integrating, and we've got another increasingly there actually, because adverbs are really nice to add into your task 1 to show how something is happening. So that's just a tip for task 1 there. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's video. It's been great to have you along. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope that's been really helpful to clarify the future simple and the future continuous tenses. That's great. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.